Hi, Coach Val here with Running on Carbs. I want to welcome you to episode number 38 of the Running on Carbs podcast. Thanks so much for being here today. We have a fun topic. Well, it's fun to some people, not to everyone, but we're going to talk about it. And by the end of this episode, I hope to inspire you to love hills. Big hills, little hills, up hills, down hills, all the hills, rolling hills, dirt hills, asphalt hills. What other hills? Lots of hills. So we are going to love hills by the end of this episode. And send me a message and tell me when you go out there and brave the hills and tell me how you implement all the things we're going to talk about today and share with me how you did. So that is your challenge for today's episode, and I want to hear from you. All right, so again, welcome to the episode. I am Coach Val, and I am here every week to share with you all things about running, plant-based eating, a nutritious and healthy lifestyle. Whether you are 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, or more, and even some of you youngsters out there that are listening who are not quite to their 40s. Don't worry, you will get there and we will be here for you. So let's get started. First off, please, if you are enjoying the podcast, I would love, love, love it if you would rate the episode and the podcast itself over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you listen. We're also on YouTube. So if you want to jump over to YouTube and, see my shining face talking to you every week, those episodes are all over on YouTube as well. So please jump over there and again, leave a rating or send me a message. That's probably the easiest place to send me a message. Or, of course, if you're on Instagram or Facebook, I am there as well at Running on Carbs. So just look me up. All the links are also in the show notes if you'd like them. Okay, let's talk about hills because we got a lot to get through today. So, first off, why do we run hills? Lots of reasons. Number one, we are recruiting more muscle fibers when we're running hills. It just takes more effort. When you run up a hill, try just walking up a hill and you will know that. So when we start running up a hill, we're really recruiting a lot more muscle fiber, a lot of other muscles that you're not necessarily recruiting when you're walking on flat ground or running on flat ground. So, like for instance, the hip flexors to the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the gluteal, and even the calf muscles. So, all of your lower body major muscles are working when you're running on hills. And it really doesn't matter whether you're running fast on the hill or if you're doing an easy pace up a hill, you're still using all of these same muscles. And you can recruit those muscles for different reasons and for different outcomes depending on what you're looking for or what type of training you're doing. Whether you're going to introduce speed or whether you're going to do them slower. And again, we'll kind of talk a little bit more in depth about that when we get to the workout portion of today's episode. Um, when you're running hills, you're building strength and you're building power. You're also improving your cardiovascular system because your body simply needs more energy to run up a hill as opposed to running on flat ground. So, all of these bodily systems are going to strengthen and improve with time as you incorporate more and more hill work. Short hills are really great for improving that cardiovascular improvement, um, because it's almost like depending on how you run them, for short hills, you might pick a hill that's got maybe a medium to steep grade. And if you run up that hill for 30 seconds at all out effort, you are going to definitely increase your heart rate, increase your cardiovascular speed, and you're going to need to recruit more air into your lungs and more blood into your body through, a faster heartbeat in order to get up the hill for even for 30 seconds and then, recover as you come back down. So it's a great HIIT workout. And if you've never really heard about HIIT workouts, HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. And there's lots of studies around it, and around the benefits to incorporating HIIT workouts, especially for women over 40. There's a lot of science related to the benefits that women can attain by incorporating more HIIT training into their normal training schedule. So it's definitely something to add in with some regularity. However, it shouldn't be every workout that you do. As with all things, there's a time and a place for each workout, and we have to be very specific and particular about where we add in these workouts and how often and when. So, time and a place, but I want to bring up the HIIT element of that workout because they are so beneficial. It's Hill running is great for endurance in general. So, if you're improving all of these muscular systems and cardiovascular systems and such, of course, you're going to improve your endurance as you're incorporating that. So, it really helps to just boost endurance and overall fitness when you add hills into your training. Hills are also great because you don't have to go out and specifically do a quote unquote hill workout to get the benefits of running hills. You might live in a neighborhood where you simply have rolling terrain, and therefore you can't run in your neighborhood if you aren't willing to run hills. You might at first look at that as a curse, but truly, you probably are stronger if you're running that neighborhood on a regular basis than someone who lives, let's say, in a very flat neighborhood where they don't run hills very often on a regular basis, and they actually have to go and make a specific effort, concentrated effort, to go to a hill somewhere and bring that into their workout. You're going to just naturally build a lot of these things we're talking about by running in your own neighborhood. You're probably more of an expert at this running hills than a lot of other people are, simply because you do it all the time. I don't have a lot of hills in my neighborhood, although I am fortunate that there are some hills when I'm doing hill work that I can run to and do that aren't too far away. So I can just simply do basically a warm up run to the hill, do my hill work, and then the whatever it is, mile or so back um, as my cool down. So I'm fortunate in that. And then otherwise, there's just some very minor incline, decline in my neighborhood. My neighborhood's pretty darn flat, though, for the most part. I wouldn't say that there's any hills. It's just more like a small grade in my neighborhood. So I don't get a lot of hill work in on a regular basis, like I said, unless I am specifically training hills, in which case I have somewhere I can go and use. Um, but for me, the way I get hill work in is I go on my long runs to an area that is undulating. So there it has a very slight incline on it's an out and back, and so it has a very slight incline on the way out, and then that means that on the way back there's a slight decline. But there are a lot of undulations along the way where there's a little bit of up, even though you're going mostly down, and vice versa. So there's some little built-in brakes on each direction for going up or down a hill. But mostly it's fairly flat, but there is, like I said, a slight grade. So in some ways, I'm doing hill work a lot, but it's not specific hill work like we're talking about today. It's just more about that's the terrain that the my long run is on. Um, but you might have something similar, and I think that's really good because if you run on something that is somewhat flat, but it has some of that undulation, it's good for the body because it gives the body something else to do. Like, for example, when you're running on the treadmill, it's wonderful. I love the treadmill, But unless you change the incline decline on your treadmill on a regular basis, it could lead to injury over time because you are constantly at the same grade and you're constantly moving in the same exact motion. And the body can only take that for so long. So when you're running on the treadmill, it's good to sort of change that incline decline every once in a while, if you're especially if you're going to do a long run, so that your body isn't constantly at that same exact motion. We want to make sure we're giving it some variety to work with. So having a pathway that has some variations is always a benefit, if you can find one and if that works for you. All right, let's talk about some tips for running up a hill. Really, when the key to remember about running up hills is form is everything. Form is what will make that hill enjoyable. Does that sound funny? An enjoyable hill? But it is true. You will enjoy the hill and get far more out of it if you are focused on good form. Also, it gives your mind something to work on. So there's always that. So for running up a hill, make sure that when you are taking your strides up the hill, that you're using shorter, quicker turnover. So shorter, quicker strides. This is going to really help you. I realize that you might be thinking, why would I want to take more steps on the hill? Shouldn't I, reach out my leg really far and take big long strides so I can bound up the hill and get up faster? That's actually going to take a lot more energy than your smaller, quicker steps. So increase cadence on the hill. Cadence is your foot turnover, number of steps per minute. So you want to take shorter, quicker steps. That's actually going to be more economical for your body. So taking those big long steps makes your body work harder. And so the shorter, quicker steps is more efficient. So you want to take those quick short steps. Lean into the hill. Now, I don't want you bending way over. You're not leaning over. You're simply not standing up straight on a hill, because if you stand up straight on a hill and you try to run up it, you're going against gravity and, wind resistance and everything else. So you want to lean a bit at the ankle toward the hill as you're taking those quick steps. This is going to help you get some momentum, even though you're going up. It's going to help move you forward and not work against gravity. You're going to work with gravity if you do this. But remember not to hunch over. When you're running up hills, you really want to be careful that your eyes and your gaze stay forward and up, and that you're not bending over looking at the ground in front of you. I see a lot of people running up hills and they're looking at their feet. And that's going to instantly lead to neck issues, shoulder issues, back issues, especially low back. So you want to make sure that you are upright, lean forward into the hill, quick steps, and that your gaze is forward and up a little bit. And then that's going to give you more proper posture. Um, as you're running up the hill with those quick steps, focus on your knee lift. Now, this is also going to depend on the grade of your hill. So, if your hill is very steep, you might need to pick up those knees a little higher. So, this is where your high knee work comes in before the run. And, as part of your plyometrics and other strength training and cross training, do your high knees. They're going to help you on these hill runs. But lift your knees the hill, because you really want to be focused on moving your knee up to put your foot in the right position as you land. So a low knee drive is going to give you sloppy gait, I guess is the best way I could describe it. As you land, after you lift your knee, as you land, focus on landing on the ball of your foot. And now this is not on your toes. And so landing on your toes can lead to some injuries, especially like, that's going to put a lot of pressure on your Achilles and, other areas of your lower limb and your calf area, shin area. So you want to focus on landing on the ball of your foot. You're not going to be landing on midfoot because you're going up a hill. So that would be kind of an awkward position to land in. So focus on the ball of your foot, and that's going to give you some good push off as well as you're coming off of it. So don't land on those toes. Too much for toes. Ball of the foot. Also, focus on your arm swing. So as you're running up the hill, this is where your arms come in handy. So if you want a good arm workout, run hills. It sounds funny, doesn't it? But you really want to pump your arms as you're running up the hill. It's going to help you immensely. So if you find that you're struggling on a hill, think about, what am I doing with my arms? Are my arms in tight on the side? You want to be careful that you don't have your elbows flared as you're running up the hill. You want to keep your arms in close to the body, not like right up against your body. You're not doing military push-ups, but close to your body, and that you're pumping the arms in a good pumping fashion, so that it gives you power. And that's what you're looking for from your arm swing, is that power that it brings. So good, strong arm swing, and not clenched fists. You want to make sure that they are just as you would when you're running, that you have a loose grip, or fist, a loose fist. There you go. Um, so be careful not to clench your fists as you're running, because again, that's inefficient. You're using energy if you're clenching your fists. Not to mention if you have fingernails or something, that really hurts. So I just was like testing it. I'm like, ooh, if I squeeze really hard, that could really hurt the palm of my hand. So loose fist, pump your arms, power. Got it? All right. As you are pumping your arms and running up this hill, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but you want to relax. You're like, Coach Val, how in the world am I supposed to relax as I am running up a stinking hill? Let me explain. So, as you are running up the stinking hill, keep your shoulders relaxed. So, shoulders are down, they're not up here by your ears, and you're not all tensed up. Your shoulders are down and back. You have good upper body posture as you're moving those arms. You can think about the shoulder blades behind you being just pulled together ever so slightly to keep that upper body in a good, upright, you know, good position, good posture with your shoulders back, and then moving the arms as you go. Also, your facial expressions. It's not so much the expression as it is holding tension in your face. You're going to be breathing harder. Breath is very important as you're running up a hill, uh, but you want to be careful that you're not clenching your teeth and your jaw. So your jaw is loose, and you're breathing, in three, out one, or in three, out two, depending on your exertion level of the hill. Um, and I'm not going to focus too much on breathing, because really that kind of depends on your hill and your exertion level. But the idea is that you have a rhythmic breathing as you're running up a hill. You're not gasping for breath. You're not holding your breath. That's very important as your exercise and your workouts get harder. You really want to make sure that you're not holding your breath. We don't need you passing out on a hill. Your neighbors will wonder what the heck happened. So be careful. Always, of course, work within your limits. I hope that goes without saying. But yes, keep your body. Otherwise, anything that's not working, you want to keep it relaxed. So your core is going to be engaged to keep you solid and in that forward lean and protected. You may feel it in your core as you're running up a hill. I know I always feel my core when I do hill work because I'm engaging it as I'm moving so that my hip flexors can move and be supported and the rest of my body. So the core is, from just below your chest line down to like mid hip, just below your outer hip area. So that's your whole core. So that whole area is going to be working and engaged. And if you're engaging this area, then you're moving through your glutes to move up this hill, then you are going to be in a good position to get yourself up that hill with efficiency. Okay, so that is running up the hill. Now, what goes up must come down. So let's talk about running down a hill. Yes, there are tips for running down a hill. You don't get to just flail your arms and wee run down the hill. You do have to have some control. So, number one, control yourself. That totally reminds me of something I did this weekend. Sidebar story. I wanted to do just a quick well, it wasn't a quick run. I wanted to do my 5 mile quote unquote long run. I'm restarting a program. So right now my 5 miles is my long run on the weekend. And um it was a weekend and I was thinking, oh, I'll just do it on the treadmill. It's only 5 miles. I don't want to have to put all my stuff together. And I was being lazy. Yes, Coach Val was being lazy. And I don't know where it came from, but all of a sudden I heard my grandmother's voice in my head. And she says, Val, go outside and play. She used to say that to me all the time because as a kid, I had a lot of energy, a lot of energy. And I know she said that not because it was for my benefit, but because it was for her benefit. And she was trying to get me out of the house. So she would always tell me when I was done with my snack or my homework or whatever. I was a little kid. My grandmother passed away when I was 9 years old. So I was a little kid. And she would tell me, Val, go outside and play. Go outside. So that was the voice in my head this weekend when I was thinking about running on the treadmill instead of going outside. So what did I do? I put on my clothes and I went outside and ran. So I went outside and played. It's because I listened to my grandmother. So listen to your grandma and go outside and play. Okay. So back to what I was talking about. We were talking about going down hills. Okay. So going down hills. There is a greater stress on the lower limbs when you're going downhill because of the impact. So, greater stress on the tibialis, the hip, and the knee joints. We really need to make sure that when we are not in our running days, but on our strength training days, that we are keeping this area strong, that we make sure that we are doing our hip strengthening exercises, that we are doing exercises that support our knees and that we are focused on our lower limbs, our calves, our Achilles, our feet, and make sure all of these things are being strengthened on our strength training days so that they can support us in things like downhill running, where there's a lot more impact than even just straight running. So, on a downhill strike, a foot strike, it's going to be different than your uphill. So, downhill foot strike, you can strike with your midfoot. You don't strike with the ball of the foot because actually when you're hitting at the ball of the foot on a downhill, you're causing a much greater impact on the rest of your body, especially those those lower bones in your shin area and your ankle. I mean, it's so much easier to twist your ankle on a downhill than on an uphill. So we really want to be careful of that and cognizant. So midfoot strike going down a hill is what you're aiming for. You also want to be careful that you're not overstriding on a downhill. Very easy to do, especially if it's on a pretty steep grade. Very easy to overstride. You're actually going to lose efficiency and speed if you're overstriding on a downhill. So avoid avoid that overstride. And you also want to be careful that you're not hitting it with a heel strike, because a heel strike on a downhill, again, inefficient, lots of impact, and it breaks you. So you're actually braking with every step when you're hitting on your heel going downhill. And you want to work with your momentum this time. So before we're trying to work, um, not fight gravity, we're trying to, move with it. Now we're trying not to fight gravity, but in a different way. So we're trying not to allow that momentum of gravity to pull us out of form. So we want to be careful about that heel strike and really aim for that midfoot. As you're running, you want to keep a light stride. So light on your feet, quick feet, light on your feet. Take a lesson from the football players and their quick feet. That actually could be a very good plyometric exercise to incorporate too, or some quick feet exercises to help you incorporate that speed that you need as well. So just kind of sidebar, you know me, sidebar. Um, don't lean backward. That happens a lot because we're afraid of falling down a hill. So, I mean, it's perfectly natural, to be cautious and to not want to fall forward down a hill. But you also wanna be careful that you are not leaning back too far, because, again, that leads to poor foot landing, and it also leads to that braking, action that we were talking about before. So as you're running down the hill, you don't need a forward lean per se, but you want to move your body into the hill, so into the downhill. You want to go with gravity, with the momentum in this case, in a controlled fashion. Just use that momentum to carry you, but you really want to make sure that your whole body, again, focused on that core. This is where your core work comes in on your strength days, making sure that your core is strong so that your body is otherwise controlled. So arms again are in at the side as you're running down the hill. You may want to relax the elbows out ever so slightly from the body, if it helps with balance and control. I know some people, and I do the same thing. So as I'm running up a hill, my elbows are much tighter into my sides. But as I'm coming down a hill, I let my elbows flare out just a couple of inches, and it gives me a little more balance and control of my upper body. So you might try that and see where your elbow position gives you the most comfort and control over your posture and the rest of your body. As you are going downhill, make sure you're really focused on what muscles you are activating. And I know it kind of sounds a little odd, like, okay, they're all working, Coach Val. They are all working. And they will be, because especially if you're doing lots of downhill, or if you just aren't used to downhill, you will probably be feeling your quads quite significantly. And those quads also, you can feel your hip flexors. The hip flexors are, right where the crease of your hip when you sit down, they're right there in that area. So they can get really tight and really sore, especially if you do a lot of sitting generally. So, like if you have a desk job, those can get really tight from all the sitting that you do, or if you do a lot of driving. Um, then those can get really tight. So you want to make sure that you are working those and strengthening them properly on your strength training days. You didn't know you'd be talking all about strength training today when you tuned into a hill work episode, did you? But it's so important because you have to have the body strength in order to support this more advanced type of running. You don't have to be an advanced runner to do hills. Beginners do hills. It all depends on how you run them, how often, all of these other elements, of course. But as you're running these hills and you're going down, activate your glute muscles. Again, your big butt muscles, the not big butt, but the bigger muscles in your butt. There we go. And not the hip flexors in the front of your body. So those hip flexors are the ones that are going to kind of stop you. Um, and you don't wanna overload those. They're not meant for heavy activity. They're more of like a support muscle than they are a primary. I think they are technically a primary mover muscle. However, not in this case. In this case, it should be your glutes. So focus on using your glutes to control you and to really power from your glutes, not stopping yourself from your hip flexors. Okay, so we've done uphill and we've done downhill. Let's just talk about some other general running hill related tips, okay? That don't really, it's for all hill running, not just up or down. So I mentioned this earlier. Really focus on your breath. Don't hold your breath. Oh, please don't hold your breath. Um, I mean, you should never be holding your breath when you're running, but definitely not on hill work because it's much harder. Also, on the flip side, be careful that you're not hyperventilating. I think that the potential for hyperventilation can happen more on the uphill than the downhill. But as you're running up the hill, if you are completely gassed, totally out of breath, and you're not just doing a little short sprint, but like let's say you have a big hill and you're totally gassed and you're gasping for air and your heart rate is, jumping in, 180s or something, then slow down. Slow down, take a walk break, listen to your body and make sure that you're doing this safely. It should not be killing you to go up the hill. It's not the purpose of a hill sprint, and it's not the purpose of any hill run. So focus on that breath and make sure that you're still breathing in a controlled manner, even if you're breathing harder than normal, because it is a hard workout. It's meant to be, but it's meant to improve your fitness, not lay you on the ground. Um, Again, slow your pace. So if you find that you're really overworking on a hill, then back off on your pace. Try to maintain the run if you can. You might feel like you're practically walking up the hill, but if you are moving one foot off the ground and another, and you're always one foot on the ground and not two, you're running, you are not walking. So try to continue your run. If you can't, take a walk break, especially if this is new to you. So, if you are new to hill running, there is no shame in taking walk breaks. If you have a big hill that you're going up and you can run 500 yards, 200 yards, and then you have to take a walk break, and then you kind of catch your breath, start back up again, do the next 500. I find long hills a great opportunity for something of a fartlek run. So, a fartlek run is where you're doing a fartlek is speed work. So, it's called speed play. You might not be doing speed play with a hill because you're not running fast, but the concept is the same. So, if you have a big hill, I have a hill near my house. It's a half a mile hill. It's perfect for training for races that are very hilly. It's gotten me through some fantastic races. So I love that I have a big, long, kind of medium grade hill. It's a perfect hill for this. If you have something like that, let's say you have a very long hill, like I'm explaining, um, as you're going up it, you really need to sort of parse out your energy as you're going up a hill like that. You can't just sprint up the first part and then expect to get to the end at the same pace. So, like when I start on that hill, I start out really slow. And if I haven't been doing hill work for a long time, I will run up to a certain point, like the first sidewalk or something, or like the first crosswalk. And then I might walk across the street and maybe a little further. And I'll say, okay, as soon as I get to that car, I'm going to start running again. And then I'll run for a ways and then I'll set a new goal. And I'll say, okay, at that mailbox, I'm going to take another walk break for 10 seconds. And so I'll get there, walk for 10 seconds, And then no matter where my energy level is at that point, I'll start running again and set a new goal. And I do this all the way up the hill. Then I run back down and I will start again. So, depending on how many hill repeats I'm doing that day, if I'm doing a couple of them, I'll do it again, but this time I'll set new goals and I'll try to beat my last goal by just a little bit. I mean, even if it's just, not that parked car, but the next parked car, that is an improvement. And I think that that really helps mentally and physically to improve hill work when you're a beginner or if you haven't done hills before. It's a great way to improve yourself over time on hills. Break it up and see little improvements. The nice thing about doing hill work, especially like that, is that you can quickly see improvement. So if you're doing a hill workout once a week and like that in that fashion, you're going to notice pretty quickly your fitness improving, especially, of course, if you're doing other runs and workouts throughout the week. They're all going to support you in your hill work when you get to it. So try that on your next run if you're new to hills, or if you have a new hill to conquer. Then try this process and see how that works for you. As you're running up the hills, it's really a mental game. So try to focus your mind on the muscles that you're activating. The ones, like I said, the glute muscles that are powering up the hill. Focus on the foot landing. How's my foot landing? Just every once in a while, do a body scan and check your body. Where are your arms? Where are your shoulders? Are you clenching your jaw? Are you powering through your calf, which is not meant to power you? Or are you powering through your glutes, which are meant to power you? So really try to move your focus to the part of your body that is supposed to be working. The calves are supposed to be supporting you. They should not be the ones actually moving you up the hill. So use the bigger muscles to power the runs, not the smaller muscles. Here's another mental tip that really helps to improve your mindset when it comes to hills. I've used this in races. It is so effective. And so you want to always practice what you're going to do in races. So the tip is that as soon as you start coming up to the crest of that hill, you can see the top of the hill, go faster. Pump your arms harder, move your legs faster, focus on the top of that hill, like really put your mental focus, your visual focus on the top of that hill and crest the hill strong. Always crest a hill strong. I don't care if you're gassed at the top of it because once you're at the top, then you get to either go flat or turn around or something, but you get to recover when you get to the top. So always when you get to the crest of the hill, now I'm not talking 100 feet back. I mean, like you're cresting the hill, you're finishing it. That's where you really turn on the power. It is a great mental boost. I did this in a race a couple of years ago, and it was one of those races that I didn't really know the course. They didn't have it all laid out with terrain grade and all of that. So I knew like where it went on a map, like the squiggly lines, but I didn't know, what was the incline of anything. I didn't know if there were hills. I've never run it before. Turned out there was a hill, not a lot, but there was this one hill, and it wasn't long. I don't even think it was a quarter mile. I mean, it was pretty short actually, but it was steep. It was very steep, and a lot of people found themselves walking on this hill. And I had been doing my normal hill work, which is that half-mile hill I was describing earlier, before this race. And when I got to the hill, it wasn't just that one hill. There were some undulations and little hills earlier before that. But then at the final portion, there was this big steep hill, and then it flattened out. Again, I didn't know it flattened out because I didn't have any, course map that told me such a thing. But I kind of had an idea, okay, it's going to be flat at the top of this. But when I got to this hill, I I sort of planned I could see it, how big it was, so I planned out as I reached the bottom of the hill and I was starting up it, I was more efficient with my energy, so, I conserved some toward the bottom, did a little slower pace, but about midway up, everyone started walking around me, and I kept going, but my pace was slower. I simply conserved my energy on the lower part of the hill so that by the time I got to the middle of the hill, I could still run, even if my pace was not quick, because they all tried to run fast up the hill. And then they lost their energy and petered out and had to walk. I was able to run past them because I was conservative. And by the time I got to the top of the hill or just about the crest, I turned on the power and I ran up the hill like much harder than I did the rest of the hill because I could see the end was in sight. And boy, at the top of that hill, when I crested it, it was all flat, thank goodness. Um, but I could recover. And boy, was I gassed. Oh my gosh, I was so tired. My heart rate was through the roof. But because I reached a flat, I could recover. So I recovered from the run or the hill, and then I had overtaken, I should say, I had overtaken all of those people who were behind me. And I'm sure some of those people were in my age group, so yay for me. So that's what the mental side of cresting a hill can do for you. And, when it comes to hills, they're hard. They just are. You're not gonna get around it. They're not easy, but they're not meant to be. They're meant to challenge you. They're meant to improve you in so many ways, from the mental side to the physical side. Your fitness will absolutely improve as you incorporate hill work into your weekly runs. You don't necessarily have to do them every week, but if you do incorporate them, there's some tips on incorporating hills into your training plan. So, like hill repeats, for example, are a different workout than I had described earlier, which would just be a hilly route. A hill workout in your training plan is very specific. It has a specific purpose, it has a specific outcome. You should be running a specific grade hill or length of a hill, or if you're doing repeats, you're going to be doing something specific like a 30-second hill sprint, 10 times, 8 times, whatever fitness level you're at the moment. You're going to have a warm up and cool down surrounding your hill work. You may even have a long run with some hill work in between built in. Again, it really depends on what are you training for. Uh, then you're going to incorporate hill work that's going to support that overall training outcome that you're looking for and goals. Uh, the place that I put hill work in a training plan is in the strength training phase. So, a strength training phase comes after a base building phase. So, if you go back to, I don't remember which episode it is, but I have an episode several weeks ago where I talked about periodized training. So, if you want to do a search on that, you certainly can. But periodized training takes your overall training plan and puts it into um, plans as far as focus. So, base training plan is really building your base fitness. So, your endurance, your mostly it's endurance, really. So, it's mostly your endurance as far as like length of runs, how you feel during the run, then you go into the strength training phase, and that's where we're going to do things like some longer speed work, some tempo runs, and some hill work, for example. So that's where it'll live. And you don't do more than a couple of quote unquote workout runs during one weekly plan, one weekly training schedule. So in a training plan, I wouldn't build in a hill workout more than once a week, even if you have a hilly long run, let's say. A hill workout will have a different purpose. Hope that made sense. It was kind of a long roundabout way of getting there. But start with, if you're going to incorporate these on your own, just start with a couple of hill repeats, and then add, multiple repeats uh, as the weeks go on. So maybe in the first time you ever do hill repeats, let's say you're doing those 30-second hill sprints. You're going to sprint up the hill for 30 seconds as hard as you can, and then you're going to jog or walk down the hill. Maybe you start with 4 of those. Maybe that's where your fitness level is. And then you'll go on about the rest of your run. That's a great way to incorporate the hill work into a workout and introduce your body to the mechanics of incorporating hill work. Um, and then next week, since you did 4 this week, maybe next week you do 6, and then you just sort of build on. Um, and maybe in the 3rd week, you don't add any more repeats, but maybe this time you try to beat your time. So this time, each 30-second sprint, you try to improve your time going up the hill, or your distance, I should say. You improve your distance over that 30-second time. Um, and so your pace is getting quicker as you go up those hills each time. So there's different things that you can focus on in your workout to improve. You don't necessarily always have to add more time to the total workout. The length and the grade of the hill is really dependent on the hill availability in your neighborhood, like I said, and then also what you're training for. So if you have a big race coming up and you know it's got some massive hills in it, you're really going to want to focus on similar type of hills if you can. If you have a treadmill, that's fantastic. You can use the treadmill and set the grade to practice that hill specifically on your treadmill. A lot of treadmills have, 12 to 15% incline grade. That's often enough for what you're doing. Otherwise, you might need an incline trainer, which is a totally different type of treadmill. Um, that's, of course, if you don't have those hills nearby that you could practice on. Um, so in the hills, you're really working on improving power and explosiveness. So that would be like a shorter, steeper hill, or at least a shorter run up a steep hill. If you're working on endurance, like for a long race with a lot of hills, then you're going to look for those big half-mile hills, like I was talking about in my neighborhood, where you have a long hill with sort of a medium to lower grade incline. Um, and really just don't do more than one hill-specific workout a week. It's too much on the body. Um, and I think one last caveat on that is, make sure that if you're incorporating hill work into your weekly workouts, that your body is ready for it. So that you're not recovering from, some injury. I still do have proximal hamstring tendinopathy. If I am having a flare up in that area, I am not going to be doing hill work because it will exasperate it and it will make it so much worse and so painful. So you want to be healthy when you start incorporating hills, because you are demanding a lot from your body when you do hill work. So running in and of itself is a big demand on the body. But if you start incorporating hill work also, you are increasing that demand on your body. So you want to make sure that you're healthy and strong before you start incorporating hill work, which again is why it's placed in the periodized training program where it is. It's placed in the strength training and the strength phase of a program. So the base building, you're going to be working on all of the muscle strengthening that is going to support your new increase in activity and demands that you're going to place on your body in the strength phase. So while you're in your base phase, let's talk about how to prepare the body. So, preparing the body in the base building phase, some of the strength workouts and exercises that you may want to incorporate into your strength training workouts during the week would be step ups. Those are great for glute strengths. And there's a number of variations of step ups. I mean, there's so many. You can have no weight, have weight. You could do side step ups, forward step ups, step downs, lateral step ups, curtsy step ups. Lots of different kinds of step ups. I say, do them all, but not at the same time. They're all fantastic and they're going to work those hip and glute muscles that are going to be so necessary to support you in hill runs. For hamstrings, hip thrusts are a great exercise for that. Adding weight to the hips and then moving the hips up. You can look up the exercise, or if you want a strength plan, I am a certified personal trainer and I do offer strength plans as well. So if that's something that you are interested in and you need a strength training plan for hill work, reach out, let me know. But anyway, hip thrusts are good for your hamstrings, also the glutes. It's also good core workout. I mean, obviously, all these things are going to work lots of different muscles, but primarily we're doing those for the hamstrings. Quads, I love jumping lunges for quads. You could do them with or without weights, but boy, that'll burn out your legs if you do them right. So, jumping lunges, oof, they scare me just talking about them. For your hip flexors, remember we talked about those hip flexors. So even if you're not doing hill work and you do a lot of sitting, work on those hip flexors. I am telling you from personal experience, they need to be strong. A good place to start is a banded workout. So taking a loop band around the bottoms of both feet, and like you're standing on the loop, and you just lift your knee like you're marching. So you lift your knee, do that, I don't know, 25 times on the right, then separately 25 times on the left. You will start to feel those hip flexors. So that is a good starting exercise. And then you can add weight and other things more advanced later. But start with those if you haven't been doing any hip flexor work at all. For calves, I like to focus on single leg exercises for the calf. You can start, of course, if you're brand new to this, start with double leg. But if you're a little more advanced, then single leg hops are a fantastic way to help work all the lower part of the body, the calf, the shin, the ankle. And it's so simple to do. You just kind of put your hands on your hips and you hop on the ball of one foot. Do it for, I don't know, 30 seconds. That'll burn your, your leg out. You'll feel it. And then switch and do it for 30 seconds on the other. And do that a couple of times, and you will feel that, I promise. So plyometrics are really great for any calf work. And single leg as much as possible. And then for core, all of these exercises I've talked about really are helping the core. But for something specific, like if I were to pick just an exercise to help the core, I would say a standing weighted crunch is really great. I really like those. Again, you're going to work those hip flexors. So if you wanted to put a band around your feet also, you could add to this, but hold a heavy weight in front of you at your chest, and you simply bring your knee up toward your chest as you do a crunch in the air. So again, you're getting some single leg work here, balance, weight, you're crunching your core. You really want to make sure that you tighten that core area, that you don't just phone it in, because you could definitely phone in that exercise and you won't get anything from it. So don't phone it in. You're doing it. You might as well do it right, and get the benefits from it since you're there. So that's a really good exercise for core as well. I like doing standing core exercises as much as possible because in running, we're not laying down, we're upright. So I love to incorporate exercises that really fit the movement as much as possible that we're doing. Not always, but I like to incorporate those. So, all right. Are you motivated? Are you ready to run hills yet? I hope so. I'm kind of getting excited to run hills. I have not built those back into my workouts just yet, but I'm very close. And so this was on my mind, and I needed to get it out for both, both for you and for me, because I needed a little extra, push and motivation and get me excited about running up that half mile hill again. It's a little scary, it's a little intimidating, but I know I can do it. And if you have a plan, if you have a strategy, then it makes doing the hard things so much easier. So you have a plan, you have a strategy, you have me as your coach. If you need me, reach out to me. Happy to put a plan together. I work one on one with runners. And of course, I focus on a plant based diet. So if you want to start or refine your plant-based diet, then those are things that are near and dear to my heart that I want to help you with. And if you are a plant-based runner already, then we are made for each other. So reach out. All right. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and that you join me here again next week for next week's episode. And in the meantime, have a great day and don't forget, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val. This is Running on Carbs podcast. I will see you next time.